Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 10 of Lilywhite Lounge. Tonight, we're joined by someone very special, someone who I've been a massive fan of their work for a while. I'm sure many football fans in general, but also Spurs fans specifically, will be aware of his work, and that's Harry Brooks. Harry, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Just woken up after that game, so yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Similar story over here.
Mm,
Yeah, very painful. Just boring, to be honest, game.
yeah,
Obviously, for anyone who's listening kind of later on, we've just watched Spurs draw 0-0 to
yeah,
Monaco away. Um, so before we kind of get into that, Harry, I just want to kind of introduce you and have you talk about a little bit what you do and kind of your role within football.
yeah. So, thanks for having me on. So, I work with footballers, professional academy and grassroots players as their coach, analyst, and mentor. That ranges from players in the Champions League, internationals, like I said, all the way to grassroots in America. So, it's basically working with players on their individual game outside their clubs, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen. There's lots of people that do similar kind of things nowadays. It feels like I've done a billion jobs in football, but that's kind of what it sort of has landed on now. It has been for a few years. So yeah, it's good. It's interesting. Obviously, each day is different from the one beforehand, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So, in essence, you work kind of separate from clubs
Yeah,
themselves, but you
yeah,
work with players who are often, not always, but tied to clubs.
yeah,
So you're kind of doing the extra bits that they might not get at their club.
yeah.
Quickly touch on why you might, because I saw actually some of this go around. I was watching someone who does similar work to you on, I think it was on TikTok, and I saw some of the comments like, why would, I think it was Ian Matson who was getting some one-to-one training, and they were asking in the comments, why would the club not provide these things? Why would they not kind of do this coaching with him? Why does he need to go get it externally? So can you quickly touch on why that is?
Yeah, well, you need to remember how many things the clubs have to do, how many players are in the building, per how many players there are per coach. There just isn't the time to necessarily work on the individual game. Now, there could be more, but I would always recommend to players to get it outside anyway. For the reason being, I think it's healthy that a player takes charge of their own career. And you need to remember, even if the club do their individual training, which all clubs will do aspects of it, it's going to be again from the point of view of what the club wants from you, which, perhaps it's better to go on the outside to get a more rounded approach as to what you need, as opposed to just what the club want from you. Now, a good one-to-one coach or a good analyst or whatever it is working outside the club won't go against the club. They won't work on things that will put the players' performances for the club to a detriment or do things that will upset the manager and coach. So I get why clubs would be nervous. But that's where, it's down to the player really to make sure that the person they're working with on the outside is only improving their game as an individual for themselves, but also the club they're at and the manager they're playing under.
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch on some of this a bit later in the podcast, but I think it's really interesting about kind of players maximizing what they can with their
Yeah.
careers, especially as it's such a short career. Career can be
Mm.
changed so quickly,
Yeah.
and I think
It's
club.
accepted in pretty much every other sport, so I don't know why people seem to have an issue with football doing it. You could never tell Tom Brady to not have his personal coaches. It wouldn't have worked, and he's one of the greatest sportsmen ever. Look at Cristiano Ronaldo. Imagine if a manager told Ronaldo, "You're not doing that outside work anymore. Let's see how long that conversation lasts." And the proof's in the pudding. So as long as they're smart with it, but that's where you've got to trust your athlete to be smart with it.
100%. So let's get your thoughts on the Monaco game, but then probably more widely your thoughts on the current situation at Spurs under Thomas Frank. Um, I think that game was quite summing up of what I've seen. I think some of the results were kind of papering over some of the lackluster performances, I would say. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the game specifically, but also Thomas Frank so far at Spurs?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember things in football do take time, and there's different processes to achieving, in essence, the same result that everybody wants, which is to win football matches. And there is no one size fits all for that. There is no one approach that's better than the rest. Now, Thomas Frank and his way of doing things isn't perhaps the way that I would go and do it, but that's not to say that I'm right and he's wrong, and it's not to say he's right and I'm wrong. It's just a different style. So he's very much, and what they're looking to do is they're looking to become. What they're working on is clearly building. It seems from the base up, which is how a lot of people do. They say, fix the defense and go from there. I actually have always believed it should be the other way around. Work out how you're going to attack and score goals first, and then filter it down. And there's just different processes. So, it's pretty clear that Spurs at the moment, maybe it will change, but they don't put that much emphasis on attacking through the middle. I personally would put a lot of emphasis on attacking through the middle. I would be looking for a lot more forward play. But Frank in his process is very much about having certain plays, not necessarily patterns of play, like an Amorim team, but plays in terms of a play could be a bit more generic in terms of, okay, Porro's long ball over the top to Kudus, who goes 1v1. So rather than having a general approach to how the team will play, they're looking to be organised and reliant upon those plays per se working. So, like I just said, the Porro to Kudus play, you start to see the Udogi, Xavi Simons, and Aldebaran link up play. So that was a play they're working on. The crosses into Richarlison was a play. So rather than having an overall approach of this is how we're going to play football and the plays with X's with inside that, they're more focused on the plays. Now, perhaps in time, it will come to having a more of an overall. I don't want to use the word style because, what does style mean? But perhaps that will come in time, or perhaps that's just not ever really going to be a priority. You can see from a lot of football nowadays how much of football is turning more into plays. I don't believe that it has to be that. I don't really believe in cycles. Cycles can styles can coexist within the same team. Styles can coexist across multiple teams. It doesn't. It's not true that football is now about set pieces and about plays. That's just what people have decided they're going to do because football is inherently a sport that tends to follow. So whoever's successful, they try to copy that a lot of the time. But it doesn't have to be that way. But that is the approach that Spurs are going for right now. That approach is going to lead to a lot of, certainly in the early phases, perhaps games where it's not the most enthralling, but a lot of them will be dogged. They'll pick up points. Will it be enough points to, achieve great success? Who knows? But, it's early days.
So do you think? I mean, I completely agree with most of what you said there. Do you think part of kind of the access of more information, more staff, more analysis, everything, kind of nutrition, all of that thing is kind of leading towards football being more controlled off the pitch
Yeah.
rather than on the pitch, and so part of that kind of having these recognized plays and I think obviously set pieces are kind of rehearsed plays, but you even see that one which I've touched on a lot, that one pass from Porro to Kudus is very repetitive, is very predictable. Do you think having those plays is kind of a thing that is because the coaching staff want to control everything that happens on the pitch as much as possible?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people in football are doing nowadays. Human beings are inherently uncomfortable with uncertainty. So what they want to do is minimize that. And the way that they, in their opinion, minimize that is by having those routes already planned and telling players what to do and where to be, because that's minimizing risk in their opinion. If this happens, then in their opinion, it should lead to this. What ends up happening though is obviously teams end up cancelling each other out. So football has become, they're trying to make it as codified as possible. Do this, this will happen. But what that can lead to is, like I said, teams cancelling each other out because if I know what's about to happen, if I know what the team are going to do, I can plan accordingly, and vice versa. The way to potentially usurp that is either your plan is better than theirs, or you have better players to execute it. That isn't always the case. I think the playing ability is pretty level across most teams now, because especially in the Premier League, every team is rich. A lot of players are being developed the same way. So there are a lot of them, they just cancel each other out. That's why you can definitely see a team like a Bournemouth and uh, whoever it might be, get into a top four, nearly Forest last year, but it can definitely happen. Who knows, maybe win a league. Um, Now, the way to again kind of usurp that also is unpredictability. But unpredictability means that you aren't in control. And a lot of people nowadays aren't comfortable with that. But that is why you're seeing a lot more games that are stalemates, a lot more players going, where do we go from here? A lot more players not thinking for themselves because they've been conditioned to play into the routes they're playing. So, there's a lot of opportunities there's a lot of moments if you just freeze framed situations in a Spurs game, for example, where a pretty clear pass is on through the middle of the pitch, but they're not even really looking, or Bentancur or Palhinha aren't even really showing for the ball because that's not the routine they're going for. Now, I don't really believe that Palhinha and Bentancur aren't aware of how to show for the ball. I don't believe that. They might not be amazing at it in the way that a Pedri is, but they can certainly do more than what is being told. But that's not the place that's being worked on. So it's not even entering their psyche that that could be a thing. I think there's a quote from Will Still that came out the other day about how he stopped training. I don't know if you saw it, um,
I didn't
and it
see
was
it now.
about yeah, it was quite scary to be honest. And it just kind of proves my point. He had to stop a session because the players lost the ball in a certain area, and he paused it and asked why didn't you play over there? That's where the space is. And the players went, oh, am I allowed to? That's kind of inherent of what football is nowadays. Players aren't thinking for themselves as much, and that is why you lead to a lot of football like you might see today. But the antidote to that most of the time is going to be teams that kind of like are comfortable with unpredictability, players that are comfortable with being unpredictable. So yeah, that's kind of the way it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to kind of talk about around that in terms of general football, which I think we should definitely touch on um, later on in the podcast. I think what one thing that even strikes me is like a player of, I think if we focus in on Kudus, for example, right? So
Yeah,
what you said is that, and what I'm seeing as well is that Porro is playing that one pass often to kind of get Kudus 1v1, but even that pass itself is not leaning to putting Kudus into the best situations to
no,
get in his 1v1s. It's a lot of play to his chest at times, play into a area where he has to chase it, control it, hold someone off, play it back before maybe he'll receive it again, then he can go 1v1 or whatever. Um, so even that, and I think a player like Kudus could become so unpredictable, so kind of exciting, and I think even though he's so good at what he's being asked to do, there's a level that I'm watching and I'm like, he's so good, but there's also so much more you could get out of him. And I
yeah.
think that, for example, is something that there's obviously a symptom
It
of
feels
something.
like right now he's playing with also, chains, and just being held back. You're just trying to fight his way to get kind of success, and he's doing remarkably well at it. But as you said, there could be so much more if it wasn't so reliant. Because what ends up happening is when teams suss you out very quickly nowadays. So teams have realised, okay, well, Kudus is the number one threat for Spurs right now. Apart from that, maybe 2 game period where they were playing towards the
Exactly.
left hand side a bit more, and that's when arguably Spurs looked at their best, and we haven't really seen that since. Berg is injured, whatever, but so teams are going to look to stop that. So they probably know that, 1v1 Kudus will go past you. But what can we do? Well, maybe we can accept that, but double up, triple up. And if he does go past us, can we push him away into areas where even if he does go past us, I'm speaking from an opposition's point of view, even if he does go past us, he's in an area where it's a low percentage chance of doing successful from. So the amount of times where he does beat 2 or 3 players, but ends up in the corner flag, having to cross off
Yeah,
the right foot off
always.
balance.
Yeah, yeah,
Now we got 2 assists from that in the first game of the season in a way, because Kudus is fucking exceptional. But if you just allowed him to be a bit more free and take off the weights that are on his back and help him out a little bit more, you're going to utilize his assets so much more. But perhaps that's stuff that's going to be worked on in time, because we don't know, we're not privy to what is going on the training pitch. Perhaps they're prioritizing certain things and waiting for other things, and that's just part of their process. And like I said, there's not to say that my way of doing things is right. Of course, there's no answer to that. We don't know until we know, right? But we can only go on what we see right now, and that is the issue that Spurs have. Is that they don't create chances. Is that they don't go through the middle of the pitch. It's that we're stuck in this kind of U-shaped football, and we end up just not finding the ball anywhere near the goal. Um, and you end up relying on that thing from Kudus or perhaps a throw in from Danso, which isn't enough to hurt teams. It might be now and again, but it's not enough. But like we said, it's early days. Perhaps things are being worked on.
Um, cool. So I think, yeah, I mean, what you said as well previously about Benton Compellini, I think it was actually a bit of a turning point for me this weekend at the game. So I think when you're at the game as well, you notice so much more about
Yeah,
players' body language and stuff
yeah,
like that. I completely like did a did a U-turn in my head where I was like, Bentancur's definitely not. He's definitely being told not to pass forward because he's not even checking and he's not
Mm,
even yeah, he's genuinely not even looking that way when he receives it. He knows straight away that he's going
yeah,
to bounce it to the other centre back or kind of curve it
yeah.
around to the fullback. So I think that is obviously clear. So I think there's something to say about the personnel maybe isn't good enough right now, and that might be a reason why Frank is being more conservative with his midfield. Do you think?
Perhaps a little bit, but there's no relationships really developing, or very few, other than Poro Kudus, and like we said, I've spoken about a few times the odd triangle between Odegaard, Dogie, and Xavi Simmons, but we need to have high standards for footballers, right? They there was a situation that went viral of Bentancur receiving deep left and wide in the game. And listen, he can do much better rather than end up passing out for what end up being a corner to
Corner,
Villa.
yeah,
But by the same token, okay, fine. But how there hasn't been a reaction from his teammates to instinctively even just go, our teammate's about to receive or has received deep wide left, about to be pressed, and there's no relational movement to him. There's no one thinking it's about to go into Bentancur. Let me play off him. Let me give him an angle. It's like how we need to be more. If I was in the dressing room afterwards, you can have your style of play all you want. That is just the basic of football, showing for each other. That's not allowed. I'd go absolutely ballistic. So yes, we can say we don't have the players, but there's basic fundamentals that should be demanded of Premier League footballers. That's not good enough. It just
yeah,
is not good enough. Now, okay, even if the system from Frank doesn't allow for that, use your brains, footballers. Realize the situation you're in. But it's not good enough. And I say the same thing to players I work with. There's been times when I've had not arguments, but really stuck it on pro players of mine where I'm like, what are you doing? That's not allowed. Don't this you like, but that's just I think
and
we need
that's
to have
I
high
guess
standards.
that's also a symptom of the way they've been developed from, I assume, being an academy system, from
Yeah,
coming through at different clubs.
yeah,
I guess the freedom has been taken out of a lot of footballers, and so
yeah,
they are starting to think very robotically and risk averse, I guess, or not even. It's not even risk averse. It's risk averse from doing the wrong thing the manager hasn't maybe demanded. But then also you have to have some common sense in certain situations where something requires something different, especially when Bentancur found himself, for example, there in an unnatural maybe position with his back to goal in
mm,
the deep wide left. You kind of have to play a bit off the cuff there and off instinct.
yeah, yeah. And then if your manager really has an issue with that, which I don't think anyone would, argue with him later. Be a
Yeah,
grown up.
yeah,
Have that conversation after. Tell him what you thought, what he thought. Shake hands and then crack on.
yeah. Um, right. So for what you're saying in terms of the lack of freedom given to a lot of footballers, a lot of kind of trying to over control a lot of what goes on the pitch. Are there managers out there now in the professional game that you see still having some of that freedom given to players, and who are your kind of favourites of those to watch?
Yeah, the best team in the world. So when people talk about it goes in cycles, well, the best team in the world doesn't do that. Luis Enrique, my favorite manager in the world to watch right now by some distance.
Yeah,
Um, Look at what Viz and company's doing by Munich this year. You know, we need to stop gaslighting people into saying that this is what football is now. Physicality, set plays. You don't. It doesn't have to just be that. Bayern Munich's, number nine, shall we say, is a 32-year-old who isn't the most mobile and is spending half his time right now being a world-class quarterback as well as a world-class forward. You know, but he's just really outstanding. Probably the best player in the world. PSG, fluid. their midfield trio that won the Champions League last year, Vitinha, João Neves, and Fabian Ruiz. They've all got fantastic athletic attributes in their own way. Um, Pretty much 99.9% of pro footballers do have an athletic attribute that's outstanding, even at non-league. Um, but they're not picked because of their physical dominance and physically asserting themselves on the opposition and powering over them. So let's stop gaslighting people into thinking that this is how football is nowadays. It doesn't have to be. It is if you choose it to be. There was a great saying from Henry Ford, I think. If you believe it or don't believe it, both things are true, or something like that. So if you say that, football's like that now, well, all right, fine. Then in your opinion it is, and that's what you're going to lead it towards. But it doesn't have to be. It's not in a rule book somewhere that it has to follow this cycle. It doesn't. As clearly proven by the two best teams in the world right now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because there also was a quote that came out, I think pre Spurs of Thomas Franks, where he said to not take risks is also a risk,
Yeah.
um, which is something I mentioned. I made a quick like immediate match reaction after the game, which I think
Mm.
is kind of against everything that he's doing right now. It's a lot of the opposite of taking risks. He's trying to really
I actually
minimize
think we
risk.
are taking a, no, I think we're taking major risks, but in a very different way.
But do you
I've
not
never
think
understood.
the
Well, what I'm
reason
going to
he's setting up this way
go
is
on.
because he thinks it's the least risky?
Well, what I'm saying is, I think that it's far riskier having to rely on two or three attacks to score and win a game than thinking, because then one goal against you can be disastrous
That's
because
what,
you've
yeah.
got, so that's actually, in my opinion, a lot riskier.
Which
You
is
know what I mean?
kind of his initial point was what you're
But
saying.
in
Like,
a bit in a roundabout way. I mean,
yeah.
I've actually always said that. I'm a little bit annoyed because he's taken my phrase now, so I can't really use it. But I always used to say, and there's actually a clip of me saying on a podcast before Frank arrived, so I can claim it. But yeah, I say to my players, the biggest risk is to not take a risk. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, perhaps there's different viewpoints as to what risk means right now. But I think Spurs are playing incredibly risky football in terms of getting a result because there's not enough attacks to truly threaten the opposition, and when you do, you have to score from those attacks because the next one might not come for a while, and yet they're still quite open to chances. So
Yeah, and I
that
think
process is much riskier to me. To
at the moment you're leaving pretty much everything up to chance because or much more 50-50 chance because a lot of what you're relying on are low percentage moments.
Yeah,
Set pieces are low percentage. Obviously, if you increase the amount of set pieces you get, the percentage goes up, but they're still low percentage moments. And also, you're never sustaining attacks in the opposition half, so
yeah,
you're allowing the opposition to get at your goal much more than you would if you
yeah.
were controlling the game in their half and prioritizing kind of attacking possession. I'd
Yeah.
say. Um,
There's a big misunderstanding just on that. There's a big misunderstanding is again, there's what risk is. So people talk about playing out from the back as risky, but it's not the risk that people want because people or the managers want. The risk they hate is the chance of losing the ball. So playing out from the back, that's not a risk per se because the idea is they're just passing to feet. He shouldn't lose the ball. He shouldn't
and
lose
we
the ball
are
if he's
playing
there.
out from the back,
Right.
so
He
yeah,
shouldn't lose the ball. He shouldn't lose the ball. He shouldn't lose the ball. They don't like the risk of potentially turning over possession by going for something. So there's a misunderstanding as to what they mean by risk.
yeah,
It's not risky football playing out from the back necessarily. I'm talking about risk in terms of like, are you going to play that, creative pass in the final third that might be and quite often will be cut out? Are you going to try that combination play in and around the box? Are you going to try and have those rotations? Yeah, right. Those are high percentage in terms of the outcome if they're successful, but low percentage in terms of chance of working necessarily. But the more you do them, the more chance you have of opening the team up. Yes, there'll be more turnovers, but that's where you back yourself. Whereas actually playing out from the back, most of the time, it's actually a low percentage if you're losing the ball. Not many teams in the Premier League nowadays lose the ball from playing out in their own defensive third. Not in that area of the pitch anyway. So they're not taking a risk really. It's not the risk they're talking about because it's like most managers' nightmare now to have a chance of losing the ball, which I think is insane.
yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this for a lot longer, but
Mm.
as a kind of one-to-one coach, I had quite a good concept, I thought, which is
Mm,
kind of looking at some of the current Spurs squad and talking about if you had access to them. You don't work with any Spurs players now, do you? Or if you can't say, then don't say. But
can't say.
okay, right. Well, if you did have access to these names I'm going to give you, I first want to get you to kind of name one thing you really like about their current game, and
Mm,
then what you would specifically really go in on and work hard on with them to take them to the next level.
yeah, yeah.
So the first one I wanted to mention was I had a really good one to start. I can't remember who now. Oh, let's start with Jed Spence.
Jed Spence. So I would do a ton of work on his ability in the final third to create openings. Because he doesn't always necessarily know quite what to do in the final thirds. If he's on the left hand side, I would do an absolute ton of work on him being able to open up towards left hand angles because he plays left back quite a lot. So you see he's regularly cutting back on himself. That doesn't always necessarily even mean you have to use your left foot. You can use the outside of your foot, Trevella passes, but you
Which
have
he
to be
has in his locker, by the way, because I've seen
yeah,
him
you
do that.
have to.
Yeah,
He has to be more willing to receive with his body open to that side, because otherwise he's getting locked into coming back too often and relying on that. I would then work on at the start. I would work on looking to nail down two or three specific moves in the final third on both sides that he can relate to. So one of them would be, for example, if he's high in the final third on the left hand side, that sort of diagonal cut back and then that whip cross to the back post. I'd get that locked in. I'd get certain moves where it's that one where it's that combination play where you come laterally inside the pitch, lay it off laterally, and continue your run inside the
yeah,
box for a 1-2. I'd also work on him going on the outside and repeating whip crosses on the run with his left foot in that zone between the goalkeeper and last defender. That would be where my main focus would be because he seems to be playing on the left more often than not for England and Spurs. So that's where I would
100%.
be utilising him for that at the moment. Yeah.
And I think at the moment as well, I think the he is definitely not helping the issue we have of for me, which is constantly swinging the ball back towards the right. It's been like obviously we're
Yeah.
going down the flanks a lot, but when Spence's at left back, it's almost limiting that from two flanks to now one flank.
Yeah.
I agree. I think he always receives closed,
Yeah.
and he never even gives the option of being open to look down the line to play it.
Mhm.
So it's often a straight pass back to Van der Ven. So I think yeah, you didn't mention one thing you liked about his game, but
Oh, sorry. No, well,
yeah,
in terms of his defensive 1v1s are outstanding.
yeah,
And what I love about his technical quality is that he can carry the ball at any angle. So he's very difficult. The only times when I've seen him lose the ball pressing is when perhaps he's lost a bit of concentration,
yeah,
which is more of a
yeah,
mental thing. But his ability to carry the ball in any angle is really, really useful. So there's always an exit for him somewhere because a player can't press from all sides unless they literally surround him in a circle. There's always going to be an exit somewhere, and he's very good at being able to manipulate the ball more so off the right hand side than the left, perhaps. But he's very good at being able to manipulate the ball to find those exits. So he's fantastic at that. But those are the thing, and again, his 1v1 defending, he's so difficult to get past with how he angles, he times his duels, his distances, reads the game very well in that sense.
100%. Okay, let's give you another one. Um, I'm gonna give you this one might be quite tough, but Romero.
Oh wow, goodness me. Whew.
If there is, I mean, if yeah, that's a tough one, I'd imagine.
You see, someone like Romero. That I think with him, it wouldn't be so much coaching; it would be more just training and keeping that those amazing assets not ticking over, but keep them brushing up.
Just yeah, refinement.
Sometimes he could perhaps open the game up towards the right hand side a bit
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
You know, he's a right-sided centre half usually. So there's naturally going to be more space towards the inside and left. So he's going to be very good at reversing those passes there. Perhaps if you're going to look at something, it could be can you left foot? I mean, we're talking about the highest details of a top
yeah.
tier player here. Can you perhaps left foot it to the right hand side a bit more and break lines that way? So it'd be interesting to see actually if there was like a data graph of his passes that go more than 20 yards or more than 15 yards, how many of them actually go towards the right hand side? That would be interesting.
I'd say quite. not many, I'd say.
Yeah, so I guess that could be something that you would work on. But yeah, I mean, this is an outstanding footballer that is, one of the best centre halves in the world.
And what do you like best about his game?
So there's a phrase I came up with years ago called composed aggression that I think that all the best players have, and people will look at Romero completely wrong. He's never been a lunatic. Well, not a lunatic in the rash way. The reason people think he's rash is because when he hits you hard. But that's always going to be the case. That's his style. He's actually so composed because to have that style, but to actually very rarely be mistiming a challenge shows how composed and measured he actually is. It's just because when he hits you, it looks big, but it would be the same effect if he just tripped you up. But you're never going to look at that as someone and say they're rash.
Yeah,
So, all right. And then the problem is, yeah. So, but of course, every player is going to mistime a tackle now and again. So when you do mistime it, it looks worse than what it is, right? But in terms of like his success rate of his duels and tackles compared to fouls given, I don't know, but I'm guessing he is one of the best in the world at that. So, in my opinion, he's never been rash. I honestly believe this. Of course, he's had bad games. Everyone does. But again, people misconstrue that. And then again, that composed aggression for his on the ball ability is just so aggressive with his passing, but so composed, so much belief, no hesitation in his head. Um, if he does miss a pass, it doesn't bother him. He's going to try it again the next time, and just a wonderful, wonderful footballer.
yeah, I think that's so true about his kind of um, composed aggression in terms of his defending because I think sometimes I always think like he's hit someone really hard, let's say, got the ball, and then the ball's rolling, potentially for like him to do it again, because as in the other players got there first, and you
Yeah,
expect someone like once they've won that first one to get that momentum and hit them again, but then
yeah,
he'll just stand up and jockey, and it's like that
yeah,
kind of composure to be able to like
yeah,
limit yourself. Okay, you've hit one, but you're not actually there yet to hit them again. The
yeah,
next one, I think that's
yeah.
like a prime example. Okay, I'll give you a couple more. Um, let's go with Odobert.
Yeah, so Odebear has to do a lot more when he's 1v1 and he hasn't got momentum and space and there's physical contact. He doesn't know how to use his body to ride the physical contact. So if he's got momentum and there's a bit of space, he's fantastic at being able to shift line. So if the defender can't get that contact to him, he's very good at going past him. He's not a powerful runner. He's quick, but he's not like Antoine Semenyo, powerful, like
Yeah,
once you're away kind of thing. So what he has to do a lot better with, if there is someone near him, being able to ride that contact, keep the body in the way of the ball, use his arms. So that would be the number one thing because that is what's stopping him from getting separation in and around the box. So
which
he
leads to
turns over.
numbers, right?
Right, exactly. So if you have that, and you don't have, when I say separation, you don't have to completely beat a player,
No.
but you have to work enough space where you can, let's say, for example, if you look over my shoulder here, like just work enough, like just to squeeze a shot around there, or not the shoulder in the player, but like just as a comparison to like
Yeah,
distancing. Like you don't have to, if my head is like the player, I don't have to completely beat you to get the shot away necessarily, but can I just work enough angle where I can bend that ball around
right.
you or
Yeah.
through a gap? And a part of that will be able to like deal with the presence of other players. So
Is some of
because
that gym work, or is that more about how he uses his body in terms of positioning
well,
and
he doesn't. I mean, I'm sure that there of course will be gym work in that. I'm sure, but he doesn't know how to use his body right now, in my opinion. He doesn't know how to use his hands and arms. It's very rare that you'll see Odebear approach a 1v1 and widen his frame. So he's a very narrow. So
yeah,
then, therefore, the player doesn't have that much. The opposition player doesn't have that much distance to
yeah,
go and retrieve the ball.
yeah,
And if he's not that powerful, they're just going to step across him.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah? And I think you never see him like kind of cut across them and use that arm. It
yeah,
seems
use
to be
that, get
very
their body in cross, and you have to
it
be able
seems to
to.
be
You have to
very
be even like dip under. One technique that we use with players is that ability to lower your height and dip under them and get
yeah.
around them. Eden
Which is
Hazard was
why
the
I think
master at
part
that.
part of who was the master. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Eden Hazard was the
Yeah.
master at that. Being able to like dip below and like so the defender can't not just do that. If you know what I mean.
Um, I think part of what that is the reason that you see a lot of his 1v1s. It's a nice little first like maybe double step over or one step over,
Yeah,
and then it's the cross is blocked because he hasn't
yeah,
gained that separation,
yeah,
which is probably frustrating. But what are your, I guess, what are your kind of thoughts with him as a whole? Like, obviously he's 20.
Yeah.
He had a rough first year because of that injury.
hmm
Um, so are you kind of positive about his development so far in the circumstances of what he's had to go through with injury and stuff like that?
I mean, yeah, there's loads of talent there. If you can work on his ability to ride challenges and to deal with the presence of opposition players, then he goes up levels instantly. You can see there's talent there. There was a great piece of play done earlier in the game where he was going in one direction, a really nice chop back inside and play Richarlison through for a chance on goal. He's a good connective player in around the box. He's got really good. He understands how to beat an opponent in terms of how to move the ball with his feet, how to change line, how to, where to go. But he just, it's because he hasn't got that ability to ride a physical presence. And so therefore he needs that momentum and he needs to beat a player almost completely to have a chance. And that is very rare. It's very rare that you completely beat a player. But
Yeah,
if you do work on that ability with him to be able to just produce, but just shifting it slightly and ride a physical challenge and use your frame more, then he can beat. But that is coaching, in my opinion, and that can be worked on, no problem. That isn't that difficult to work on.
yeah, for sure. Okay, I'll give you one more on this. I'm gonna give you, I think. I mean, I think there's a few that I think I'm expecting to be quite obvious, which would be Brennan Johnson, Solanke, and I've heard you speak about those before. So I want to kind of give you someone
Yeah.
who's unexpected. So I'll go for Van der Ven.
I would be spending an absolute ton of time on him right now to develop his ability to break lines with his passing. Being able to cook to move the ball through the lines that way. And I'd be working on his ability to be more of a front foot defender as well. Because I think the best defenders in the world, there's this thing about cat and dog. I don't really believe it. Yes, okay, you can have one that's more style than the other. That's fine. But the best defenders can engage high and sweep. In my opinion, there's no
Yeah,
reason they can't
my
do
thought
both.
about that has always been quickly, but
Yeah, go on.
that the ball can come either way. So
Exactly.
if on the right flank, your right centre back is the cat, for example, but
Yeah,
he has to go and meet a challenge
yeah. No,
high,
exactly.
then you're not going to get your left centre back who's the aggressor to come over and do that. So you're going to have to do
Yeah,
both, right?
yeah. No, exactly. So I'll be working on that with Van der Ven. I will be telling him the model of which I say to every player. Sounds silly to say, but your first priority is can I score here? For the reason being is you're not asking Van der Ven to score from deep in his own half, but the best thing that something could happen from every phase of play is it ends in a goal. So that should always be your first priority because then you can work because then you're not missing anything out if you know what I mean. You
Yeah,
can work your way back from there. But loads of players end up don't even seeing those passes in the opposition half because they're not even looking for them.
yeah,
Look furthest first and work your way back. You can't look right in front of you and see it. But if you look for the furthest option first, you can see everything in front of you. So
yeah,
I'll be spending a ton of time on him, basically setting up drills where you've got to find the furthest man with your pass. It doesn't mean a big,
Oof.
hoof up down the line. It just means find the furthest man, find the next furthest man, the next furthest man, and we work way there. So at least you see the pictures and you have the confidence to play those passes.
Something like that. Is is that something that you find easy to work with players on? Something like I mean, for me, that I've always seen something like that as quite an innate ability, I guess. Like the way I see the way Van de Ven strikes the ball, for me is quite. He hits the ball very crisp, but it's quite his hips are quite stiff, I would say.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
and so like even the trying to like conceptualize or picture him reversing a ball to the right, for example, doesn't
yeah,
quite make sense in my head. And is that
you know what I mean.
do you think that's something that's easily worked on? How would you go about working on?
There is no rule to that. You have to work with the player and see where they're at and what they find comfortable and not. Of course, it can be worked on. Of course, it can be improved. How long it takes, how you do that is a different thing, and everyone's got a different way of doing it. But it can be worked on and improved. And all right, he could. Who knows? If you work on it, how do we know he wouldn't be better at it than Romero? There's no way of knowing, right? Unless they are working on it and it's just not clicking. So we don't know that. So
Yeah,
it's a bit of a non-answer, but you just don't know until you do it and work on it, and then it's something you might spend a lot of time on him with, and it might just not click, and you might have to go, okay, right, well, Do we spend time working on different things now and whatever it might be? But if I had him and without knowing him personally, that would be what I'd be my conversation would be to start off with and saying, right, let's get to work on this because you add this to your game and your ability to be on the front foot as defender. I mean, it's scary what I mean, he's already pretty good, isn't he? But
Yeah,
imagine if he had that to his game as well. So yeah.
yeah. Class. I put out a tweet earlier. I've got a couple questions from that. I also have one from my friend who's a massive fan of yours. I told him I was having you on, and there's a phrase that you always say that he loves, which is, this player does or doesn't have enough fuck you about them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
can you quickly explain what you mean by that? And then he had a specific question. His name's new. I'm gonna give him a shout out. Yeah, can you explain that?
Yeah, so when I say he's got fuck you about him, it means that I don't care who you are, what opposition player I'm up against, what they're doing. I'm going to do my thing and you're going to deal with it or not deal with it, whether you like it or not. So, a player that I really like the look of right now, I want to watch more of him, is that Leonard Carl.
Yeah,
Now, he scored a goal tonight, which is fuck you all over. Before that ball arrived to him, I guarantee, kind of what I said earlier, his instinct is, can I score here?
yeah,
And then what that does, you have that belief and then you end up not missing out on opportunities to be as effective as you can because you're prioritizing the most offensive thing possible. So you're creating those possibilities all the time. And then, of course, no surprise, you'll end up doing that. So he approached that ball, attacked that man, attacked the space, hit it, goal. And there's different ways of having it. So fuck you is about that. Like, I don't care who you are. I know what I'm going to do, and you're going to try and deal with it, and let's see if you survive.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. And he asked, do you name kind of three, maybe not the obvious Mbappe's and players like that, but couple players that you really like, you said Leonard Carl, but a couple more that you think they have that, and that's they you really like what they're about, and then maybe a couple that you think if they added that they could go to the top level.
Yeah.
If
Oh,
you've got
wow.
them,
Okay. Yeah. There's not too many of those players around nowadays, unfortunately.
yeah,
Endrick has a ton of fuck you about him, which I love.
yeah,
If he just cleans up his technical game, which I believe that his mindset, I know his former coach and that, and I met the lad when he was 13, and just every story I've heard about him is that he has the top mindset. So I'm sure he will do the work on it. But he has that fuck you mindset about him. It's going to drive me mad because there's going to be a player that I forget to
yeah,
mention later on. I
no, yeah,
remember,
yeah, of
but
course, of course, of course,
but it doesn't always even have to be someone that is that style. So in a different way, Elise has that, but in a much more rhythmic way. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So Elise is incredibly efficient. Nothing's wasted, but that allows him to be so creative. Harry Kane has it. So it's not about having a player that's just going to be like a bulldozer with the ball and crush through everyone like a Kvaratskhelia.
yeah,
It's about making sure that everything you do, you have purpose. So Adam Wharton, the way he passes the ball, fuck you through
yeah,
the lines.
yeah.
It's that kind of thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 100%. And then a couple players that you think need to add some of that, but have with that have some potential kind of
I mean, I've always said it about Brennan Johnson. I really do. It's not, he doesn't have to become an elite 1v1 player, but just that ability to stay on the ball, like, because when he approaches 1v1s, he's almost on the back foot. If he just went on the front foot more, done things ugly, created his own separation and again, created his own chances, his composure and finishing inside the box, every time Johnson gets put through on goal, I have no doubt it's going to go in the back of the net. Just no doubt, because he's just so good with finishing from those chances. And when it's served him, even if it's played into space for him and he has to cross it across the box, his first and his Tottenham got a few
well,
assists from that.
yeah.
When
What's
it's
mental to
created
me is
for him,
that he's obviously so sure of himself in those situations,
yeah.
but he's so the opposite of that in other situations. And
Well,
that
there's such basic things that he's not doing 1v1. For example, he doesn't ever change line with the ball.
no,
It's always straight line, and it's straight line off the back on the back foot. You're going to just the defender's going to step across and win it easy. So yeah, he is someone I would love to get my hands on and just go. I'll figure out why this isn't happening. Talk to him and see, is this something that you're trying and it's just not clicking. Do you have a misunderstanding of how to do 1v1s? Like I said, he doesn't have to become Vinicius Junior with his 1v1s, but just that ability to stay on the ball longer and that willingness to do it and that willingness to fight your way through now and again will add so much to his
Yeah,
game
that takes
because
you further than you can even
so
think of.
much. And now you probably become Spurs' most important forward because you can't underestimate how hard it is to score 18 goals as a wide player. That's not easy.
In a
But
struggling team as well.
right, but there's not many wide players in the world that can score 18 goals and then end up like fourth choice the next season. It's because you're not doing the other stuff. You
Yeah,
became so reliant on that skill that isn't going to be utilized in this team to the same way. So now you don't play.
yeah,
But having that ability to stay on the ball, he will probably start every single game
yeah,
or, be one of the main men anyway.
yeah, 100%. There was one player I also wanted to get you to touch on quickly, and that's
Yeah.
Bergvall. Um, what do you like about Bergvall's game, and what would you work on with him?
I mean, he's such a smooth technician. He's a real all-rounded number eight. Um, what I'd
Do you
work
see
with
him as a
him
number
is
eight?
at the moment, yeah, 1000%. I'd work on his ability to be a bit more measured at times in terms of being more efficient with his work. It's so far, I imagine Bergvall, sometimes it could be like you're going the long way around to do things when you could be more efficient and get that ball going forward with more efficient work. But that is something that will come with maturity, experience, and he's clearly got the mind to be able to do that. Um, yeah, I'd work on his ability to sort of thread passes through the middle of the pitch a bit more as well, because his skill set is phenomenal. He is a phenomenal technician, very good athlete. Clearly got a great brain, strikes the ball so purely. Phenomenal ball manipulation. But sometimes when you sort of try so hard to do things, it can take away that class which he does have the ability to do. So I'd be working in his ability of like, I'd work on a ton of Adam Wharton stuff with him. That ability of like, and Paul Scholes, where it's like touch, angle
That yeah,
play. Um,
that's what
and
I
work
feel
on a
like.
ton
For
of
me,
that.
I feel like he takes too many touches.
Yeah.
And I think I agree. I think it is like a maturity thing. I think it's
I'd make sure that we don't take away his ability to just carry and go and burst. That has always got to stay there, but add to it by also like right angle touch forward, angle touch play forward, angle touch pass and move, that kind of thing, that connective thing. I'll be doing a ton of work on that,
100%.
and the technical ability to do that is there. It's just
Yeah.
is he seeing those? Is his mind working that way at the moment? Which at the moment it probably isn't to the level it could do.
Um, okay, so we've got a message from a question from Momo Slacks who says, given Spurs have needed a deep lying playmaker, does Tyrese Hall, who I know you're a fan of, have the physicality, consistent passing range, and defensive awareness to play in a Spurs pivot next season? Especially as Harry has coached him, I think, says someone.
Yeah, Ty is a fantastic footballer. One of the most talented I've ever worked with. In fact, there's not a player I can say that I've worked with that is more talented than Ty. He finds football easy. Um, is the best version of himself would solve a lot of Spurs issues right now. But Ty's playing his first season of men's football. You can't underestimate how he's doing phenomenally well. Um, but you can't underestimate how much you learn by doing that. It can take players a season to even just get used to the physicality of that. It's a way of doing things they've never done before. So yeah, of course he could play for Tottenham next season. Like I said, he's a phenomenal player. Um, but you should be patient as well and do things the right way. And he's doing really well at Notts County right now. Let's just stay focused on keep doing really, really well.
Have
The
you been
future will take care of itself.
have you been surprised that he's been playing further forward?
Um, Not really, for the reason being, I think a lot of managers
Don't
will.
trust that.
It's just they if they're going to be the ones to give a player the opportunity in the first team, and they're going to be the ones to see if they can do it, they'd probably rather he's further away from their own goal. Not just Ty, just in general, players
Yeah.
like that. So I'm not surprised, and I'm not surprised at all that he's doing really well because he's just a really marvelous footballer. Ty's never been he's certainly in the last couple of years his number one asset hasn't been goals in and around the box, but he's just that good. So of course he can do it.
Is he one of
Which
those
don't underestimate.
rare players who you think could play 6, 8, 10 to a
Yeah. One
like in
thousand
any
percent. Yeah,
midfield
yeah,
role?
yeah. 1000%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's
Um,
learning a lot about us off the ball game as well, which is really improving, which is fantastic.
Quality. Um, okay, a slightly more general question. If you could change one rule off the pitch in the Premier League, such as homegrown quotas or anything of that kind of subject, to improve the game or player development, what would it be if you've got one?
Maximum two signings a season for your first team.
Yeah,
Maximum. That was my colleague's idea a while ago, and I agree with it instantly. I think it would improve football no end because you now have to rely on being good at what you do because you cannot just go, oh, it's okay, we'll just go spend another 30, 50, 60 million pound on this one. If this one doesn't work out, you have to then coach your players. There'll be a deeper connection with the club and the fan base, which will improve everything because obviously there'll be more academy players coming through. Um, you can't just because, wealth, obscene amounts of wealth can encourage laziness because you can just get lazy and go, well, we will just sign the next great one. And that's where you can see, not very good coaching necessarily or not working with what you've got or, there's loads of players over the years that, could have been coached or could have become something if they were given if they needed to be, so I think that would improve. Listen, the feasibility of it, who knows? I'm not the one that's deciding that. But in terms of improving the quality of the player and the product of football, that would improve it like no ends.
I mean, yeah, I would love that, but because I think even as I've got older, I've found the transfer windows quite boring. When I think when I was a kid, I used to love it, but I think,
Yeah, yeah.
but the only caveat I would say is I would worry that certain players would get locked into situations that are unfavorable.
Potentially, but then you probably have a rough, it's unfair, probably a rough 5 to 10 years to iron all that out. But then
Yeah,
what would end up being the product of that is that every player that's part of a squad would have to be part of a squad, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
but then again, like I said, like this is a wish of mine. It
it's a
could work
dream.
out
Yeah,
that the feasibility of it could end up being, oh no, it could end up being exactly what you said, and it ends up being a disaster because players do get stuck. So perhaps that's a rule that can be worked around so that can be avoid happening.
yeah,
Maybe perhaps if a player has played less than 30% of minutes, then he can be transferred. But I don't know how that would
yeah,
work.
yeah.
But
Of course,
yeah,
of
but
course.
but
I mean,
I
it's
think playing on a rule where because like even PSR hasn't worked. Yeah, it
no.
just hasn't worked. There's loopholes around it. People will find loopholes. So while you're allowed to do something as much as you want, there's going to be loopholes around it. So if there's a way that we can stop clubs from just hoarding players and getting lazy by just spending on the next player, and force coaching, force quality, that will improve the products. If there's a rule that can be made about that, I'd love to hear it. But yeah,
Quality. Right. That's been kind of everything football chat. We always end this podcast by having both guests recommend one thing away from football that people should check out.
love that.
I haven't thought of one right now. Well, let me think. Have you got one like a series, an album, a film, a
You know what?
restaurant?
I mean, it is a football book, but I'm not reading it necessarily because it's football. But there's a great book that my
Yeah,
colleague bought me. I think it's called. Let me just quickly grab it.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
I'd recommend because this is what a lot of people would love to see in today's game. Maybe not to this level off the pitch, but the greatest football you never saw, the Robin Friday story,
Yeah.
and it's basically the lower league version of not lower league. It was still like second or third division, I believe, but that version of like George Best and just the stories that he would do and the way he'd play football. And people don't know about him, and he played for Reading and Cardiff, I believe. But just yeah, so I'm reading that right now. So all right, it's technically football,
But
but
it's more about the whole thing.
it's more about the story of the character. So I would
Quality.
recommend anyone listening to this that would like a bit more personality in the game to read that story. It's a because I bet no one on this podcast knows who he is.
No.
But I recommend you get that book, read it. My colleague bought it for me, and yeah, I love it. It's brilliant.
Mine's gonna be a classic that I've literally watched so many times. That I actually watched again last night, which is a kids' film called Surfs
Yeah.
Up. But it is like it makes me feel so. I don't know why I love it. It's like
I am
it's
actually
about
watching. Yeah, go on,
a
go on.
penguin
Yeah,
that is a great surfer and he goes
yeah,
to the surf competition, but it's just like a very like I don't know how to. It's like it's basically the way it's set up is that they're filming a documentary on him, so it's like a
yeah,
and it's like him being kind of stuck in this small town, and then he goes to this big surf competition. You just have to. I'm
yeah.
sure loads of people watched it, but that is a good recommendation of mine. And
Nice. I'm
yeah.
also watching right now the Barry Hearn and the Eddie Hearn document
Is that
series on
Netflix?
Netflix.
Yeah.
Netflix, sorry, yeah, Netflix. Yes, that's yeah, they're two characters. Yeah,
I watched the trailer for that. It did look good. He's
yeah, I'd
very
recommend that.
entertaining.
Yeah,
Yeah, cool. That's been a brilliant conversation. I would love to have you back on. I think
of course.
where there's more time to chat more generally, and we're not stuck
Yeah.
on the Spurs stuff. But yeah, everyone go check out Harry. What's your handle on Twitter?
Well, I haven't been asked that in a while. I
Yeah.
think it's H Brooks underscore, yeah, H Brooks underscore coach.
Okay. So you can go check him out there. He does obviously a lot of work away from there, but there's the odd bit of coaching insight on there and just player insight. So do check that out. Is there anything else you wanna plug?
I guess if people are interested in a bit more of the work I do and the players I work with, then my company's called RH10. So we're not on Twitter, but they've got an Instagram. So RH10 RH number 10 football. So they can check that out. Actually, there's a bit of Tyrese Hall analysis on that, so they can go and have a look at that if they want.
Quality.
But yeah, so if you want to see a bit more of the work I do, it's on that. But yeah, I'm not really the most social media savvy person. So
Yeah, no worries.
yeah.
No worries. We got you on here all right, so that's all that matters. Cool. So thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully we'll get some more positive Spurs performances in the next couple of weeks. And come on, you Spurs. Perfect.